Hey, what's up everybody? 8-Bit Flashback here. This is part 2 of how to make Sega Genesis and Mega Drive custom labels. In this video, I'll show you how to print the labels using a standard inkjet printer with vinyl glossy sticker paper. And I'll also show you how to apply these labels and discuss some lamination options as well. In order to print the cartridge labels, you will need to either design a custom label as I showed in part 1, step by step, or you could use Google image search. For example, when I searched Sega Genesis Contra cartridge label, I was able to find one ready to go. And when I searched some other games, I was able to find a few more labels. But just to give you a heads up, finding labels this way will be very limited. That's when designing your own custom cartridge labels becomes handy, or you could just customize an existing label as well. Here's an example of an original cartridge label for TMNT for the Sega Genesis. And I find it to be a little bit boring. I'm not a big fan of the colors on that label. So I decided to go ahead and design my own custom cartridge label, and I thought it turned out well. And here it is with my custom green cartridge shell. So after finding a cartridge label image ready to go, or just designing your own, it's time to print it out. But first it will have to be resized in millimeters, so it prints out in the correct actual size. There's multiple options out there to do this, but one free option would be using Avery.com online with template 3383. After making a simple free account, you can edit a wide variety of templates that can be saved and downloaded to print on your own. So I'm all logged in now, and I'm going to start designing with template 3383, and then select this blank one right here. And this is going to open up a blank 8.5 inch by 11 inch template. And now I'm going to select Edit All and close that out. And now it's time to add an image. And I do have some images ready to go for my cartridge labels. But first you're going to need to know what size the cartridge label needs to be. So I would recommend measuring the cartridge label opening on your cartridge itself to know the exact dimensions you'll need. I do have a couple of dimensions here for the stock cartridges that I'll give you, but make sure to measure the cartridge first. That way you have the correct size. And here's a tip for you. If you're looking just to replace a cartridge label, a lot of times you can just heat that label up with a hairdryer and it removes pretty easily, and a lot of times you can get that label off in one piece. And if that label is in good shape still, you can get some accurate measurements by measuring the label itself. For this particular aftermarket Mega Drive cartridge, the width is 81mm and the height is 75mm. So as you can see here, I already have a couple images added to my template, and now I'm going to add a third. So I'm going to click on the Add Image button off to the left and then search for an image that I already have ready to go on my computer. So here is a TMNT cartridge label. So I'm going to upload that to my template. And now I need to resize this. So I'm going to uncheck the lock aspect ratio, then select millimeters, then change the width to 75mm and the height to 68mm. And this should now be the correct size for a standard Sega Genesis cartridge. So I have 3 different cartridge labels I've uploaded now, and they're all sized the same, that 75 by 68. Now we're going to add a Mega Drive cartridge label, and we're going to size this one just a little bit larger. So I've uploaded that by clicking the Add Image. Now I'm going to go down to the millimeters to make sure the locked aspect ratio is unchecked, and change the width to 81 and the height to 75. And again, you want to confirm what the actual measurements are by measuring the cartridge you plan on putting the label on. So for an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of sticker paper, you can fit approximately 6 labels on each sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and add 2 more labels. And now I have 6 different labels on here, so I'm going to select Preview and Print, and then select Print It Yourself at the top right here, and then select Print All, and then go down to Get PDF to Print. Now you have the option to save, and I would recommend that. That way you can edit this later if you want to. So I'm going to save my project and just call it 6 Genesis Labels, and then I'm going to save that to my account. And after that saves, it'll give you the option to save it to your computer. And this will save in a PDF format. So I'm going to click on that Save button down at the bottom. Once that downloads, I'm going to click Open. And to open this, I am using Adobe Acrobat Reader. And here is the PDF I just downloaded. But before we print this out, we got to change a couple of the properties first. We're going to go up to Properties, click on that, then Paper Quality, then go down to Advanced, then go down to Print Quality, and we're going to change it from Normal to Best. Then select OK. We're going to go up to Media and change it from plain paper to photo paper. and click OK. And now we want to make sure that the actual size box is checked. Otherwise it's going to print out in the wrong size. So everything looks good here now and it's time to print. But before we do that, we got to get our printer set up and ready. So here's a look at some of the printable vinyl sheets that I have. I did pick up these particular ones at Hobby Lobby. I was able to get these at a 2-for-1 deal, so I got 20 different sheets for only 10 bucks. And these work pretty good, but they only have a matte finish. These ones I purchased off eBay for about $1 a sheet, and they have a glossy finish, and I think they give a lot better end product. And both of these do have a self-adhesive backing. For a printer, I'm not using anything special. This is just a standard inkjet printer that I bought 6 years ago for about 50 bucks. The only thing I have to do a little bit different with this printer when I'm using these sheets is I have to direct feed it through the back. If I try to feed this paper through the regular paper tray, a lot of times it gets jammed because it's a little bit thicker. And this may or may not be an issue for you. Another trick that I found out that works well is that if you take a pair of scissors and just round off the corners of the sticker sheet before you feed it through the printer, that seems to work good and keeps that from getting in a bind or jamming. And I do this along with feeding it through the back of the printer. So now I'm going to remove the paper from the paper tray on my printer. Now go back to my PC and select print. Then head over to my printer and feed it from the back with the glossy side up and those cut edges towards the front. And when using these two different methods, I seem to have really good luck and I don't have any issues with that sticker paper getting jammed. And another recommendation I'd give is to go ahead and print this maybe on just regular paper first to ensure that you have all the correct sizes, because these sticker sheets are kind of expensive at $1 a piece. So go ahead and do a test print first on regular paper, that way you're not burning up these expensive sheets. And here's a look at a finished sheet fresh off the printer. And I would recommend waiting about half hour before you handle these to let that ink get nice and dry. And just to let you know, I have performed numerous stress tests with these cartridge labels just to see how tough and durable they actually are. And to my surprise, they're actually very durable. The ink seems to print fairly deep into the vinyl, giving it a nice top protective finish. I've even tried soaking these cartridge labels in water. I drenched this cartridge label with water for about 30 seconds, and to my surprise, it held up. The vinyl itself is actually a completely waterproof material, but the ink would just be kind of water resistant, so I did have a little bit of bleed through onto the white paper with the ink, but the cartridge label itself was still usable after I cut the edges. So here's an up close look at it after soaking it with water, and here's what it looks like after cutting the edges. And as you can see, it's plenty usable still. For even more protection, you could laminate your cartridge labels, although I do not feel it is necessary. There is multiple different methods you could use for laminating these cartridge labels, such as a self-sealing pouch, some clear laminate you just press on by hand, or just using a regular laminating machine. And I personally prefer not to use lamination with my cartridge labels because it does make them a little bit thicker and not quite as pliable and flexible. Here's an example using a cheap $20 laminator that I got at Walmart, and the finish looks really nice. It's got a nice glossy finish, and it seems to have really good adhesion to the cartridge label as well. And here's an example of some clear self-adhesive laminate that you just apply by hand. You just put this over the top of your cartridge label and make sure to press in an evenly motion all the way across the top to make sure you don't have no bubbles. And this will probably take a little bit of practice before you get this right. And just to let you know, this was a cartridge label that I printed with the matte finish vinyl. And after adding the clear laminate on the top, I now have a glossy finish. When cutting the cartridge labels, you could just go the old-fashioned route and use a pair of scissors. But if you have to do a bunch of these, this will get old really quick. If you do plan on making a bunch of cuts, I would recommend on getting some sort of paper cutting machine such as this. This was only 12 bucks and it saves a lot of time. What you want to do first is just make all your rough cuts and leave a white outline, and then go one by one and make all your close cuts and take your time. So all my main cuts are now done with this cartridge label. The only thing I have left to do is cut the corners. So I'm going to use a pair of scissors now and just barely round off each corner. And here's what it looks like after it's all done. And this is now ready to put on my cartridge. For a cartridge, I'm using an aftermarket cartridge I bought from AliExpress. This was only like $2, and it seems to be of decent quality. To start off with, you want to do a dry fit placement first to ensure that it does fit on your cartridge like it should. Then go ahead and remove the backing by starting at one corner of your cartridge label. And this particular cartridge label does have laminate on it, so on the back side there's laminate as well, and that will peel off as you take off the backing off the back side of the cartridge label. And I don't want to take the backing all the way off yet. I'm just trying to peel it back just a little bit on one side. Now I'm going to line up my cartridge label in one corner of the cartridge. So I'm trying to line up these two edges. I'm trying to line up the bottom edge and the side edge at the same time. And as long as your cartridge label has nice straight cuts, this should line up on the rest of the cartridge as long as you have these first two edges lined up correctly. And you want to make sure at first not to press too hard down on that sticker until you have it properly lined up in the corner. That way you can start over if you need to. Once you do have the cartridge label in the correct place, go ahead and start firmly pressing down on the cartridge label up and down in an evenly manner across the cartridge label while pulling the backing off at the same time. And this will probably take a little bit of practice to get down as well. You want to make sure to press down nice and evenly or you could end up with bubbles. And with this Genesis cartridge, I want to make sure to adhere the cartridge label to the face of the cartridge first, and then adhere the top of that cartridge label last. And here is the end product. Now this is a laminated cartridge label, so it does have a very glossy finish, but overall, I think it turned out really nice looking. And here's an example of a vinyl cartridge label with no lamination, which is not quite as glossy in comparison. And as I stated earlier, I do prefer not to use lamination. I'm just showing this more for demonstration purposes. One issue I do run into sometimes with lamination is it has a hard time bending on the corners and adhering properly. But with this particular cartridge, it did work out great. If you really want to use laminate, I would say the thinner the better. Okay, let's do another cartridge label. This is a custom Vectorman 2 label, and I'm just using the vinyl glossy sticker. I'm not using any lamination with this one. So first off, I did that dry fit again to make sure it does fit properly and I don't have to do any extra trimming. Now I'm going to peel the backing off, but make sure not to take the backing all the way off yet. I'm just going to peel off one side of it here and just barely start it to where the sticker is exposed on the edge here. Now I'm going to line up two corners on the cartridge with the cartridge label. So I'm lining up the bottom edge and the side edge. And be careful not to press too hard on that sticker. You want to line up two of those edges and get those lined up nice and perfect before you start pressing hard down on the sticker. As long as you don't press too hard down on that sticker, you can easily remove it and start over. But if you end up pressing that sticker too hard, when you go to pull it off, it might stretch and become deformed and not be usable. So everything looks good here. I'm going to start evenly pressing that up and down across the face of the cartridge here while pulling that backing off. And you want to make sure to leave that backing on as you're pressing the sticker onto the cartridge because it really helps keep that sticker in the proper shape. If you were to take that backing off, then try to put the sticker on, there's a high chance you'd probably get a lot of different bubbles in it and possibly ruin your cartridge label. So just remove that backing as you're pressing it onto the cartridge. And here's the finished product. And here's what it looks like with my LED mod on my Sega Genesis. And I will be doing a video about the LED mod here soon. Alrighty, time for another one. This is a Mega Drive cartridge with a custom Mega Drive label. And it's the same routine again. We're going to do the dry fit first to make sure that it does have proper fitment. Then we're going to peel the backing off of one side of it and then line it up in the corner. So I've got it lined up on the side and the bottom. You can see a nice straight line there where it lines up. Once you have those two sides lined up, it's time to start pressing on the label. And if you want to, you can just use a soft cloth of some sort instead of using your finger. So I have the face of this cartridge label pressed in place, and now it's time to start pressing down the top of the cartridge label. The Japan Mega Drive cartridges are quite a bit different. As you can see here, it has a rounded top. So for this one, the title might look better if I flip it the other way. But for now, I'll just leave it like it is. This is an awesome ROM hack of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which replaces Sonic with Metal Sonic plus all new level designs. And here's another cartridge label example. This is Altered Beast. And with this one, I'm using a custom Sega Master System theme. And this gives it a nice retro look, and I think it goes really well with this game. And here's an example of a replacement label for Sonic the Hedgehog 1. As you can see here, it's badly damaged, so I made a custom label for it to give it some new life. And here is the end product. Sonic is back. And here's some more cartridge label examples. This is using the matte finish vinyl sticker. Same with this one. It still has really great detail when using the matte finish vinyl sticker, but it's just not as glossy. Okay, it's time for me to go. If you like this video, if you could hit that like button and subscribe if you already haven't, and have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.